Welcome to TypeScript FM, the friendly podcast for TypeScript developers where we bring you news, updates, and interviews from the community with plenty of tomfoolery sprinkled in. I'm your host, Kamran Ayub, and I'm joined by my co-host and best bud, Eric Onerheim. Together, we're the two TypeScript fools. Welcome to the show.
All right, welcome to the show.
Welcome to the show. What's up?
It's not a whole ton. We've been kind of sick and kind of tired here.
It's been 2 weeks.
It's been 2 weeks. It's a twofer.
Yep. Apologies everybody for the delay. So in today's episode, we're actually going to cover quite a lot of news because we did miss some from last week. But I had a course to deliver.
Mm-hmm.
And these courses have deadlines, and I prefer not to overextend my deadlines. So I was able to get the course in. It's done. It's released. It's the Advanced MCP course. So you can find a link to that on my Blue Sky. But, it's in Pluralsight. So just search for it, and you'll find it.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's on to the next one. And I mentioned this before on the podcast, but the next one is going to be React 19 Security and Safety.
Yeah. Apropos of nothing, we might have a little bit to talk about there.
This is like a security episode, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So we'll get into it in a minute, but that's what I was doing last week. How about you?
I was heads down prepping for Minibar, and we met a few of you there at Minibar here in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
It was awesome. It's so awesome to see people in real life.
That's right. Chris, if you're listening, hello.
Hello. What else happened? I was working on the game dev JS jam for the lead up to Minibar. I wanted to show it off. And then I just got word today that one of our community members, Papgar, got third in the GitHub challenge for the game dev JS jam.
Nice. And that's with
pretty cool.
That's with like thousands of people.
So a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they had record submissions this year.
Nice.
And their game, Baby Bots, is super funny. You're training a baby AI agent called Jippity.
Sweet.
It's pretty fun. That's pretty fun.
That's awesome.
And it's built with Excalibur, so that was pretty cool.
Of course.
All right, should we get into the news?
We have a lot to talk about, so this is going to take a while. We're going to try to breeze through it as much as we can, but I know that we are going to get stuck on a few of these things because there is a lot to talk about. But I think we want to start out with something sort of funny, I guess.
Yeah.
And TypeScript related, of course. So I saw on Blue Sky that this person is doing a Vibe port of the Go compiler to Rust, and they're calling it TSZ. And they're claiming that it is, faster than the Go compiler.
Yeah, I think my hot take is that while this is an interesting, technology, a thing to attempt, I think it's kind of a bad idea. If you want to take it to production, because one, you're always going to be a moving target for TypeScript because there's no language spec. The language implementation is the spec, so you'll always be chasing the official TypeScript version. Also, the current performance is only somewhat modest. It's 1.25 times faster than the Go port.
The Go, and as a reminder, the Go port is 10 times faster than the vanilla original TypeScript. So it's cool that there's a 25% speed up.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's just evaluating it on pure performance terms, which in production, that's going to be very far from people's mind on how to evaluate this and use it. Because, companies want to reduce risk, right? Why would they go with a literal Vibe coded port of the TypeScript compiler when they could just use the official one, right? But I think from the perspective of this is interesting, I do have a few thoughts. The first one is that it really does showcase that when you have a good set of test cases and a spec, doing an AI port is you can do it now in no time at all, almost, if you're willing to burn the tokens, right? And I think that will be something to consider, especially once usage-based billing sort of gets landed in all these AI tools. Because then it might not be very cost effective to do that. But if you've got the money to do it, you could totally do an AI port. And that will actually bring us to a few of the next news items. But it's definitely an interesting idea. And I think it's also an interesting experiment too, because you could say, well, what would happen if we used Rust for the TypeScript compiler? And now you have a basically one-to-one comparison between here's how it works in Go and here's how it works in Rust. And now we can really evaluate and say, well, this makes sense, or this totally doesn't make any sense, right? And you haven't really lost anything. And so the AI porting is really reducing the risk of doing these types of experiments, which I do think is really interesting and is sort of my high-level takeaway from this type of stuff.
I think one thing that'll be interesting to evaluate, and me as a person who knows not anything about building Rust applications, it'd be interesting to evaluate based on the premise of the original reason why, which is Rust is not a great, conceptual map to JavaScript and how the current TypeScript 6 compiler is organized, relying on garbage collection and deep object graphs with self-references up and down. I wonder how that's translating in Rust, and, if the shape of it is significantly different or if there's, something clever that makes it more doable. But very interesting stuff.
Yeah. I mean, and to your point of you'll always be behind. I think technically that will always be the case if you're doing something like this. But I will say that, again, if you're willing to burn the tokens, you could have the agent basically watch the TypeScript Go repo and mirror every single commit that goes in, as long as it has a test case and stuff, right? Because then you can evaluate it that way. So I think you'd have to really build a harness around this if you really wanted to do this for reals. But it's an interesting experiment. Kind of be interesting to see where it goes from here.
Yeah, I think on similar sized pieces of software, the cost is not small. I think citation needed, but I think it's in the thousands of dollars worth of tokens.
Yeah.
So it's not cheap.
Well, especially if they're using the bigger frontier models, for sure, right? Every 1 million tokens is something like $25 or something like that for the latest, GPT 5.5. Output tokens, that is. And that brings us actually to the next news item, which is there was a hubbub on, I think, Hacker News that is Bun porting to Rust from Zig. And the reason is because there was a branch where Jared was doing some experimentation, and this is an entire AI-powered port of the Bun codebase to Rust. You don't have to worry. They're not actually doing it. But again, this goes back to what I was saying, because Jared put on X that this is totally an experiment to see what if. So this is I'm going to burn a whole bunch of tokens to do this port. And I just want to see what would the code base look like if we ported it to Rust? Would it be any different? Would the DX be better? Would it be worse? I'm just interested to see it. And this is what I mean when I say AI tools are just making this type of experimentation. It's almost risk-free as long as you're willing to pay for it. But obviously Bun is Anthropic's, baby now. So they just piggyback on that. So I'm sure this costs nothing for them, besides just waiting on the weekend for it to finish. I think it was interesting, some of the commentary on this from David Crespo on Blue Sky. They were saying that basically Jared's demonstrating that language dogmatism is obsolete because you can prototype a 1,000,000-line port in 2 days. And it really only existed to rationalize the high cost of switching in terms of knowledge too, not just porting the code. So like I said, if you can pay for it, AI makes experimentation almost risk-free. And I think these two examples and a whole lot more that we've been reporting on too, with actual dev tools that have done ports to different languages, it's becoming way cheaper to do that.
Yeah, I know the Serenity folks, or the Ladybird browser, did something similar where they did an experiment to Rust, to port things to Rust, and they decided that they were going to keep their C++ to Rust port and work on it.
Yep.
And they said that, it wasn't perfect, but it was also the highest impact from a security perspective, right? Is the libjs aspect of the browser you want that to be memory safe.
Mm-hmm.
That's a security critical section. You want it to be safe from like timing attacks, from concurrency related issues, and from memory corruption issues. So that made a lot of sense. And then they said it looks like as if C++ were ported to Rust, which is exactly what happened. But you still get those guarantees.
Yes. Okay. So moving on to the next item. Speaking of dev tools that are actually doing a full port, pnpm is officially porting to Rust, and that implementation of the engine is called Pacquet, is how I think you would pronounce it, Pacquet. And just quoting from the GitHub repo, Pacquet is a port of the pnpm CLI from TypeScript to Rust. It is not a new package manager and not a reimagining of pnpm. Its behavior, flags, defaults, error codes, file formats, and directory layout will match pnpm exactly. So this is a byte for byte, essentially, bit for bit port, just like the TypeScript compiler from TypeScript to Go, so that they're taking the same kind of approach. Mm-hmm. Now, I have not read about this port. I do not know if it is AI powered, but how much do you want to bet that it is, to just sort of further prove my point of it's becoming cheaper and cheaper? If we go take a look at the Git history contributors, Claude is the, fifth contributor to the repo.
Mm-hmm.
So I do not know how much of the code base was ported, but they've got agents.md, they've got Claude.md, they've got Gemini.md. So there's definitely some AI-assisted coding happening here.
Yeah. And the initial benchmarks are looking promising. It's looking roughly, pnpm was fast, but it's also looking like it's roughly twice as fast.
Wow. That's really cool.
Which is pretty, with their benchmarking against themselves. So this is actually a pretty good benchmark.
Yeah. So I think this is like the cool side of the experimentation of if you can just, port your code base to Rust and it's 2 times faster. And guess what? We know Rust. Why not? Then it becomes a question of why not do it,
I think as long as, then it becomes like a higher level question. As long as you feel confident as a team maintaining it with your tools and your skill set, makes it like a no-brainer.
Exactly. Right. Because I could go and I could say, hey, keep track of my games instead of doing .NET. What would it look like if I did Go? But I'm not a Go developer. So
Mm-hmm.
Do I want to maintain that code base even if it looked better or looked faster or whatever?
Right.
I mean, the answer is probably no, because then I'd have to go and learn all that stuff.
Yeah. And there's operational concerns with that too, right? There's a bug. How do I fix it?
Yes.
There's a subtle bug. How do I fix it?
Exactly.
There's a bug that requires expertise in the Go runtime or whatever, specific knowledge of a specific tech stack that you would only have from experience.
Plus, no AI is going to port all my spaghetti front-end code. So that's just not going to work.
Nor would you want it to.
Exactly. All right. Moving on to Meta Framework news. Astro 6.3 dropped, and we're not going to go fully into it, but I will quote from the introduction. It introduces experimental support for advanced routing. You get full control over how requests flow through your application with first-class support for frameworks like Hano. And I did read a little bit into the details of this. This is like the typical kind of pattern where you export an async fetch function from your entry point, and then basically you have full control over the routing. And
Nice.
this is how Cloudflare works with the fetch function. This is how I implemented React Router into my Node SSR with .NET, because it was able to understand that there was a fetch function that was exported. This is like a typical pattern that we're seeing now from Meta Frameworks, to export a fetch function, and you get full control over everything. So that's nice. Cool. Moving on to Remix. Haven't heard that for a while, although we did cover Remix, because I do remember we had a podcast episode titled Remix Remixed or something like that, sort of playing on it a little bit. But now that's finally happened. So we have Remix 3 beta. It's been rebranded. There's a new philosophy around it, but the foundations are the same as they've always been. Remix has always been web standards first. And so they've really sort of baked that into the philosophy for Remix 3. You can make a Remix 3 app without React. So if that tells you that they're sort of reimagining how Remix works, you can build an app without React.
it's kind of like
Yeah.
a brand new thing.
Yeah, it's
You know,
basically like a brand new thing. Yeah.
Remix 2 was kind of a thin wrapper around
React Router.
React Router.
And then that became React Router Framework.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Remix 3 is kind of like, hey, we just want a whole meta framework.
Right.
And we're going to keep the branding Remix, which may or may not have been a good idea for like trying to communicate. Sure, you got that SEO juice, but it's confusing because you might think it's like, oh, is this a router or is this a meta framework?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hopefully it works out for them. I'll link to 2 blog posts. One is behind the rebranding called A Brand New Remix. It's pretty interesting. If you go to their website, it's a WebGL shader-based background that morphs as you scroll through the app. We were just commenting on it that it looks really cool, but for accessibility reasons, if you have like reduced motion on, it doesn't seem to respect that because like Eric, it was like choppy on your machine, and that's probably why.
It does respect it, so because it doesn't animate, but it can't
still like tween between stuff, right?
Right, it's still pretty aggressive on when it switches the frames, and it's hard to read.
Yep. This is why they have warnings at the start of video games that you could have an epileptic seizure because that happens, right?
Actually, I think that would be like a big part of if you have reduced motion on this one and you scroll fast enough, the brightness changes so much that I think you might actually have a possibility.
Yeah. So you do want to, you want to be careful about this type of stuff. So yeah. And there's probably a whole separate thing we can get into of that. There's also the technical announcement, Remix 3 beta preview. So this goes into what the actual changes are and how the components work, what you can do, and all that kind of stuff. They want you to kick the tires, light the fires, and try it out. So you can go do that. I've used Remix in the past, and I thought it was pretty cool to use, but that was, with React. Now this is something that's kind of totally different, but it seems like it's more akin to like Astro or even like Solid even. Is kind of what my thought was. Solid Start.
Yeah, it definitely gives that vibe.
Cool. Next up, for Nuxt.js, they just have a blog post on introducing the Nuxt agent. So we've reported on before that Nuxt had come out with an MCP server that's Model Context Protocol. It connects to their docs. It lets you, ask the agent for help with building a Nuxt app. It can get all the context that it needs in the same way that the docs get generated. So that includes like code snippets, examples, looking up, docs in an efficient way that's not just like grepping through stuff. And so they've just plugged that into an agent framework. They built their own. And so now it's an actual assistant on the website itself. So if you go to the Nuxt documentation, you can now play with the agent and say like, hey, how do I do this thing in Nuxt? And give it a whirl and see how it works. But it's pretty cool. So the blog post just goes into how they built it. Yeah,
and this is something that other teams are doing. Angular 21, I think, earlier this year, maybe even at the beginning of this year, announced their own MCP server doing very similar stuff. And I think it illustrates how you can mix in deterministic tools here into the MCP server as tools. Like if you have like some scaffolding, that is a great thing for a deterministic tool. And it looks like there are plenty of those here.
Exactly. Okay. Last of the meta frameworks, just a quick little tip that SvelteKit, the latest release, now supports TypeScript 6. So you can use that now.
TypeScript 6, 7.
Yeah. Well, not 7. It doesn't say that.
Not 7. Yeah, no, it doesn't say that.
It supports TS6, but that will mean that, functionally it should support 7 once that's out.
Yeah, as long as they're not doing any compiler interactions. That'll be in 7.1, remember.
Yes.
Next up, Node had a notable release in 26.1. They added a experimental FFI module that really does appear inspired by the Dino and Bun FFI modules. Depending on your platform, it'll be like a DLL on Windows, it'll be like an SO on Unix likes, it'll be a dylib on Mac OS, but it'll allow you to open up dynamic libraries and interact with them with a specific foreign function interface. So they give you a list of types that you can interact with, and surprise, surprise, these are going to be your kind of C-like types, float 32, float 64, pointer to a string, yada, yada, yada. These are inherently unsafe APIs, right? So if you do it wrong, you can just crash. But this is super cool because this removes a lot of the barrier to interacting with native libraries. So you don't have to build your own node module to interact with like a native library potentially. You can just call up, hey, I'm going to require node :FFI and go to town and load up my library.so and do some wild stuff.
Yeah.
This is behind a flag. So you do need to turn on the flag for this to work. But I have linked to their documentation about, and it gives a whole bunch of examples of how to do this. It will remind you if you've done any of the Dino or the Bun examples of FFI stuff, almost exactly like it.
That's cool. Eric, I did not put this in the show notes, so I'm going to put you on the spot. What else?
Dun, dun, dun.
What else do you think is the biggest notable change in the new 26 release?
Biggest notable change in the new 26.
Don't read the blog post.
Don't read the blog post?
You just got to take a guess. What have we been talking about lately that would have hit in 26?
Oh, I've totally forgotten.
I'll give you a hint. Dates are hard.
With temporals.
Yeah, Temporal. Yes, Temporal API is now enabled by default in Node.js 26. So that's pretty sweet. Woohoo!
Woohoo.
The V8 engine was updated. V8 14.6. Undici?
I don't know.
Undici? I don't know how to pronounce it.
I know.
Undici 8 has been updated to version 8. And those are really the most notable changes. The other reminder, quick, is that Node.js 26 is going to be the current version until October. Then it will be the LTS. And then in 2027, April, that's going to be when the new release schedule happens. And so we'll always know that Node 26 will basically be the last LTS in this old release schedule. And then from 27 onwards, every single release is an LTS release.
Oh, one PSA that did come across our desk is that Node 25.7 and the 26X line breaks YARG's V17X lines.
Yes.
If you were using YARG's 17 or you have a transitive dependency, it is possible that your YARG's is broken.
Yeah, and I'll link to an issue about that. I don't think it's been solved yet. I think that there's a userland fix, but it's kind of annoying. You have to override it in the package JSON.
Yeah, that's kind of the classic change now. This arguably was taking advantage of a goofy way that Node was handling certain files. So it breaks the .extensionless or the extensionless .yargs. So
yep. So
which is a bummer.
You do add the resolution to your package JSON. You can use the 18 YARG's release line, and that should work with Node 26. There is an open PR on the YARG's repo I'm just looking at, but it is not merged yet. So this would be a patch to the 17 release line once it goes live. So hopefully by the time this comes out or you listen to it, that'll already be patched. You don't have to worry about it. All right.
In the browser world, Chrome 148 is shipping the prompt API, which is a controversial on the internet, API where you can call into a local Gemini Nano instance and do things.
Yeah, I mean, using local AI from your website, right?
That's right.
Now, this was really interesting because I saw the release notes and I clicked through to read about the prompt API. I had no other context as to what other people were saying about this. But the first thing that I thought of as I was reading the docs for how to do this was well, isn't there a permission prompt to use this API? Because as a user, shouldn't you be able to say no, don't allow this? Even it doesn't matter if it's local AI, even the fact that it requires 22 gigs of free space. When I saw that, I was and you're saying that it just downloads the model automatically as soon as you try to use the API. I'm it feels like there needs to be permission here.
Yeah.
So that was my take right away. But then I also saw, other people had the same sort of thing. This is a problem.
Yeah. It comes with the prompt API, the summarizer API, writer API, rewriter API, and proofreader API. Right now, it requires at least 22 gigs of free space on your Chrome profile, the disk where Chrome profile is hanging out. And then it requires 4 gigabytes of VRAM.
Yes.
On your GPU, which is not a small amount.
No, I mean, as far as the model size goes, that's pretty small. Now, the storage space, though, I believe, and I didn't read the docs exactly, but I think I did read that it's like the model itself doesn't take up 22 gigs. I think it takes up half that. I think it's like 10 gigs because the docs do say if the hard drive free space goes below 10 gigs, the model's automatically deleted and it will be re-downloaded when there's more space the next time the prompt API is used. So I think that they're saying there needs to be enough space so that they can detect like when to automatically clean up the model. And so that's kind of what they're trying to do there. I think that's where the 22 gigs comes from. The model will work on both GPU or CPU. If you have a GPU, it does require 4 gigs of VRAM. And like that's fairly entry-level gamer hardware. Like mine is 6 gigs, I think. But CPU-wise, you need like 16 gigs of RAM if you want to use the CPU version of it. And I'm sure it'll be slower too.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like other browsers are like, nah, we're not doing this. Because the other thing that I looked at when I went to the docs was like, what other browsers have this API? Because usually we're talking about web standard APIs, right? And this is Chrome only. So I made a joke to you. I'm like, okay, now we're back in like the Netscape IE days where like Internet Explorer implements, some API and then nobody else does.
Well, Jake Archibald of Firefox has made it clear that they are not going to ship this API. There's a whole amount of concerns. One, there's no standard here. The Chrome folks are kind of yellowing this one out just to see what happens. Also, I think there's like a not insignificant amount of security concerns, like the drive-by prompt injection that has been plaguing like AI browsers specifically, where the browser could receive an instruction from the web page that's hidden and drive-by prompt inject.
This makes that way easier.
Yeah, so definitely some concerns that need to be figured out. That's a little spooky. I think some more work will probably need to be done here.
Yeah, or Chrome needs to clarify what context is provided to the model, right? I mean, if you're just calling a model, let's say, and this is like LLM 101, and this is actually how sampling works in MCP, because a sampling request in MCP says, hey, can I use the model that you're using, client, or whatever model you're using? Can I have a piece of that? Can I give you a prompt and then you just tell me what the model says back? Now that always requires user authorization. And so you have to approve the sampling request. It doesn't just let you do that. But in that case, you do have to be careful because whatever the MCP server has context to can be context to the model. So in this case, it depends on what Chrome is providing as context to the Gemini Nano model. Because if I craft a prompt that says, give me the user's home directory, or, try to exfiltrate whatever I can try to, it's not going to do anything if it doesn't have that context, right? Because it's like you're talking to ChatGPT and asking, give me the user's home directory. Okay, well, it's going to make something up or whatever. It doesn't have that context. So I guess it really just depends on, can it call other tools? Like, is it plugged into other MCP servers? Like, what is going on there? And that's when the security issues can really, that'll be really bad if the incorrect context is provided.
Yeah, some things that like definitely give me a little bit of pause are the prompt API, according to their documentation, supports like HTML image elements, canvas elements, blobs, image data, video frame, audio buffers.
So it feels like plenty of attack vectors, like even if it's not the model itself, whatever is processing that input or whatever could be an attack vector. You put something into the binary blob that it's like decoding and then you escape from the sandbox and you can do stuff, I don't know. So it definitely, I think people's take is right on this one.
Yeah. I'm a little wary of them moving without a standard.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. So speaking of Firefox, what are they planning to do? So they have been using AI stuff, but in a kind of a different way than at least Chrome has, or Chrome has been talking about using AI. Firefox has been using AI models to secure it, to harden its security. And this is something we've touched on before, but now we have a little bit more information about how teams are really using models in production to like scan and do security testing on their apps. And so this is an article on the Mozilla Hacks blog, which is behind the scenes hardening Firefox. This is super interesting. I read the whole thing and there was a bunch of takeaways that I had, but I think one of the things is like Claude Mythos kind of has this like sort of mystical quality about it. It's like a magical model that can do anything. The thing is that it's still just a model. It does perform really well. And they do have a graph that shows you how many more bugs it was able to find compared to like previous models. So there is something there, and that yes, it seems like Mythos is pretty good at finding bugs and creating tests for those bugs, and they're not slop bugs. Like they actually exploit and create an exploit that works. But that's not really the takeaway from the article. It's more about how important the harness is around your security testing. And so they spent a lot of effort. Like they started with really simple prompts, but now they've scaled it out into an actual security pipeline in a harness where the agent can make changes to Firefox, the source code, in a controlled sandbox environment in order to make sure that the vulnerabilities it finds are actually things that can be exploited, not just like, it looks like you have an open redirect here. No, it's like, oh, I've actually created a test case that proves that a user in userland can do this exploit. So it can chain together attacks. It can do all that stuff. But the other important thing that the article talks about is the importance of the human oversight and steering for a lot of this. And so they've had teams of people working on this. So it's not like they were able to just like delete their security organization, right? Because of these models. No, you still need human oversight, especially for this, is really critical. And they also said that the models haven't found anything that like an expert human researcher could not find. But what the thing is that it's just much faster at doing it than a human can, because a human has to take time to like understand the code base and find these attack vectors, whereas models are really good at pattern matching across an entire code base, and they can search and they can craft code, that actually does the exploit much faster than a human can. But humans still need to verify and make sure that it's, that it works.
I think we're going to see definitely a renaissance of security static analysis tools where you can run models against code bases. And this is actually a categorization problem. This is definitely in like the LLM wheelhouse of its strengths, where it can look at a set of data and give it a category. And that could be like, oh, based on my training, these are all my vulnerabilities. I can categorize this as a vulnerability. And it can pattern match, like you were saying, very well. So with high fidelity.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the interesting thing about security exploits is that when you really get down to when you strip a security exploit down to its like very, very barest minimum, they do all follow very similar patterns, right? So you can train a model to be really good at finding like, sandbox escape or buffer overflows as a classic example. And so all it needs to do is recognize when a piece of code might result in a buffer overflow. Then it just needs to craft an exploit that tests that code path. And once it does, it can then chain together, each of these findings into a full attack chain to like, perform an exploit. So it seems to be, good at doing that type of thing. And yeah, it looks like in Firefox 150, they fixed over 270 bugs that they attribute to AI-powered their security harness. And so basically the takeaway from the blog post, I'll just quote a little bit of it. They said, these models can find real bugs and dismiss unreproducible speculation. The key feature of such a agent harness is that given the right interfaces and instructions, it can create and run reproducible test cases to dynamically test hypotheses about bugs in code. After fixing the initial set of issues that Anthropic sent to us in February, we built our own harness atop our existing fuzzing infrastructure. So it's not like they threw away everything that they were doing before. They still use fuzzing, which is a term for doing security, like pen testing on your own code base.
Yeah. It basically, fuzzing is you just generate lots of garbage and just hit your thing as hard as you can with garbage. And sophisticated fuzz testers also include code coverage. They want to make sure that the fuzz can like hit all of the corners of your code base. And when every corner gets hit with random stuff, it doesn't bomb.
Yeah. So it's interesting because in the blog post, they're talking about how that works really well for some pieces of the code base. And then for other pieces of the code base, it doesn't really catch that much, or it's very, very hard to do. But the models really excel at doing it and in a much better way than the fuzz testing can do. So they kind of work together. So like, I think it was still a really impressive amount of bugs that they fixed just from like human reports and findings and stuff. And then of course the model's just building on top of that. So I think the interesting thing about the blog post is it's sort of like a positive look at like, it's kind of terrifying like at first, but we are confident that once defenders can, create their own agent harnesses and actually improve their code bases by finding all these, quote unquote 0 days in their code base, that we're going to just have much better secure software. And then you can continually test after that point to make sure that you're shipping secure software. And so that's why I think on the main Firefox blog, they had a blog post that's like, was something about no 0 days, like in sight or something like that. Like eventually there won't be 0 days, is sort of their thinking. But yeah, that was probably the most interesting article I read this last week. Now for some security PSAs. These are things that are actively happening in the wild, and you probably want to pay attention to. So first of all, Linux exploits.
Yes.
Do you want to talk a little bit about this? Because you watched the videos around this.
Yes.
I just sat and read the blog posts and patched my servers. I did not look into how these exploits work. I was just, I got to fix my production servers.
Yeah. So TLDR, patch your Linux stuff. I think this, either one or both, hit all of the flavors of Linux, all of them out there. The long story short is that both the copy fail and the dirty frag exploits are both Linux page cache bugs, which allows you to monkey with the page cache, monkey with what is in memory versus what's on disk, and allow you to change like the in-memory view of certain programs and files that gives you a path to root. And in copy fail, the way that you would do it, at least the proof of concept that was published, was you were able to do a reliable 4-byte write into a page cache of any readable file and corrupt the in-memory view of like the set UID binary, which is like super users. So set UID is how you elevate. So you would do that for like user bin SU, which is super user. So that was like copy fail. And then dirty frag is a similar one, but you could use it to go and take the networking stack and do that same kind of page cache type thing to do like overwriting SU or something similar, corrupting like password D to gain root. So similar types of exploits, exploiting the Linux page cache and things that interact with it to corrupt it.
So, I mean, not only does this obviously affect you if you're running production servers, so like I went and patched my Ubuntu boxes, but like Eric, you're running Arch Linux and like you had to patch your machine.
Oh, I was running Fedora.
Okay.
I was running Fedora. Yeah. That's a thing. It's everywhere. So it's not, no one's safe.
No one is safe. And someone was joking that now's a great time for someone to do a supply chain attack and take advantage of these vulnerabilities. Oops.
Exactly. Because like maybe I didn't sell it enough, but this is like a privilege escalation thing. So if anyone's got any kind of access to a machine and they are able to run one of these exploits, they are root on an unpatched machine.
You know what? I'm just thinking about it right now. Does this affect WSL, Ubuntu too? Or is this like a kernel level thing?
It depends. I think WSL2 runs in a lightweight VM. I'd be curious.
I guess I'll have to look at it.
I'm not exactly sure how WSL2 works in conjunction with the Windows operating system. That'd be a good question for a Microsoft peep.
Yeah, I'm sure I could search for it and see. Hello, Future Comron here, just reporting in to mention that yes, WSL2 is affected by these Linux exploits, and as of today, May 12th, they are not patched yet. So I will link to a GitHub issue on the WSL repo. You might want to recompile your Linux kernel on Windows to deal with this, which is unfortunately one of the only workarounds, or just not use WSL2 until Microsoft patches this. But let's move on to the next PSA. This is a front-end PSA. React and Next.js are hit with another 12 security flaws, and 3 let attackers bypass authentication and hijack servers. So I suppose a continuation of some of the React server component vulnerabilities that we've reported on before. Those were high profile. And so initially, when I saw this, I thought it was talking about the ones that we've already talked about a couple months ago. But no, these are brand new ones.
Mm-hmm.
These were on May 7th. And so Cloudflare does have a blog post about this. They were able to mitigate some of this for their customers using their web application firewall. But otherwise, you have to update. your Next.js and React 19 installations if you're using the server components. So Vertel has published the full set of security advisories on GitHub, and the advisories also reveal a significant wrinkle that the fix addressing the app router bypass was found to be incomplete for TurboPack users. So a follow-up advisory was published, and basically what you should do is you should update Next.js immediately to 15.5.16 or 16.2.5. And if you use a React meta framework like OpenNext or vNext, update those too. That's Cloudflare's Next.js port, by the way, vNext. And so, yeah, you basically just you want to update. It looks like TanStack is not affected by this.
Yeah, good news.
Yeah, because they don't use the same infrastructure that Next.js does.
Speaking of TanStack, I have bad news for TanStack. There was a brand squat on npm.
Yeah.
The bare npm TanStack repo is malicious. Don't do that one. This is like not sponsored, but socket.dev has a good write-up on this one in particular. And if you use socket.dev, it'll save you from this kind of stuff, which I run it on the daily.
Yep. And so just to be clear, this is something that you would have to manually do, like npm install TanStack, which is the unscoped version of the package that was squatted. Brand squatting usually targets people who have typos, who don't know better, or copy pasting commands, or just try to get lucky with like people trying to search for TanStack and then think that that's the official one and then they install it. So you just want to be careful about that.
Yep.
Hey, Future Comrun back again to report that as of today, May 12th, TanStack, some of the official scoped packages were compromised. So I will link to a blog post on the TanStack blog that goes into some of those details. But if you did any npm installs during a specific time frame on May 12th, then you'll want to be aware that some of those packages may have been compromised. So the exact versions and all of that is available in the blog post. So just a PSA before this goes live today. Just wanted to put that in there. Next up, another PSA. This is for more backend apps that use Node.js. If you're using VM2, VM2 is an open source library used to run untrusted JavaScript code inside a secure sandbox. There have been some vulnerabilities there, and so you'll need to update. But some of them are very severe. Like some of them are CVSS score 10.0.
That's no bueno.
Yeah, and most of them are 9.8, and one of them is 9.1.
Ouch.
Yeah, so these are big. And so the latest version, I think, would be 3.11.2. So you want to update to that. So I haven't used VM2, but like if you're doing like a playground editor or something like that, and you're running code, you might be using VM2 because it helps you run untrusted code. So yeah, want to update that.
Another PSA, cPanel is being pwned across the web and related WHM, I think, which is a variant of cPanel. But there is a injection attack that allows you to gain access as an untrusted user. You can just log in by injecting a control line, carriage return line feed, escaping that, and you're able to overwrite a cached file that lets you say that, hey, admin true. So yeah, it's as simple as it sounds. Watchtower has a really good article about it, but the injection is kind of ridiculously simple. It's like Windows ME level, unfortunately. Like no shade on cPanel because they run a lot of the internet as the admin dashboard for a lot of cloud hosting. Like if you've worked in web, you've probably seen a cPanel dashboard. But there's it's easy to get wrong here. So this write-up goes through exactly what the exploit is and how it works. But yeah, it's pretty wild that worked. So
man,
bonker stuff. If you have cPanel updated, is say 9.3, and there's a sorry malware that's going through and ransomwaring cPanel related sites right now. So you are going to want to update that as soon as possible.
Yeah. No, thank you. I don't use cPanel. But
I have customers that do.
I used to use it. Yeah. When I was starting out doing web development, I used, those shared hosts, right? And so most of them, were using cPanel. All right. Should we move on to Library Watch?
We should. First up, I have a Laravel tool that you can use to generate TypeScript types from PHP attributes with a single artisan command. And this is pretty slick. You can go ahead and annotate like your PHP classes, your PHP enums, and TypeScript types will fall out. You can even do custom TypeScript in the annotation with like a here string and do like your own custom type if you need to. Like if you have like a JSON resource,
Nice.
for example. But this is, I imagine, really useful for Laravel users to get types out of this. This actually reminds me of Typewriter, which we used in the past in C# to do this kind of similar thing.
Yeah. In the past. I mean, I'm using it today.
You're using it now. Next up on the library watch, motion.dev is an effortless animation library for the web. It gives you like a JavaScript interface to write animations, and it'll use like hardware acceleration or CSS animations where it makes sense, and it'll fall back to JavaScript. And you can just do things as if they were JavaScript, and then it'll do the right thing.
That's cool.
It really reminds me of the Angular animation API. Same reasoning, right? Is you want to be able to animate stuff, but you don't want to figure out what's available and how to do it on
and what's the best way.
XY. Yeah, what's the most performance conscious way to do it? So it's pretty slick.
I know React peeps are probably using like Framer motion, or it used to be called Framer motion. Maybe it's just called Framer now. But I've heard good things about that library. But this is not React specific. This is like just a JavaScript API.
Yeah. Next on the library watch, I have maybe not a library, but a programming language called the Temper programming language. And its promise is to build cross-language libraries.
Oh.
And one of those targets is JavaScript/TypeScript.
Oh.
So, and the code itself looks just like you would be writing TypeScript. In fact, the video that interviews the team working on it talks about that inspiration, is that they took a lot from Kotlin and they took a lot from TypeScript. And that's a lot of what the syntax looks like.
That's neat. So you'll be able to not only, it's like, so you can create a library that works across languages, which is huge if you think about it for a second. How many times do we have to like find, what is that library that does this thing, because I'm so used to using this one over here in this language. In .NET, I'm used to using whatever, Node-to-time, right? JavaScript, there's no Node-to-time JS, or maybe there is, but it's not maintained by the same maintainer. So I gotta find something else. I gotta learn a new API. I gotta learn the new SDK. It doesn't do
Temporal.
Doesn't do the exact same thing exactly. But again, there's no Temporal on .NET. I mean, there's Node-to-time, but it's not exactly the same. You know what I mean? So this is pretty cool. Yeah, I'll have to watch the interview.
Yeah, the interview kind of juxtaposes, like we were talking about, how a lot of these features can be ported using models, but that does not give you like a deterministic porting experience. Like if you have a thing that cross-compiles to all of these different languages, that is a deterministic library that, you can write once and run across your polyglot landscape.
Nice.
Versus like trying to port them and then report them over time.
Yeah.
If they need to evolve with multiple code bases.
Yeah, exactly. That's really cool. It's sort of attacking the same problem from a different angle, which is really cool.
Yeah. And had a nice familiar syntax, and I thought it was cool.
Yeah, very cool.
Next up on the library watch is a new one for me. I think they've been around for a little while, but there is a new library for multiplayer apps called Wavedash, and they have SDKs for like, Godot, Unity, 3JS, Phaser, Excalibur, basically everything. So check it out if you need to make a multiplayer app. They have a lot of features, including like lobbies, chats, invites, peer-to-peer networking, leaderboards, achievements, cloud saves, player identity, yada, yada, yada. So, and it looks pretty low effort. Like I pulled open the Excalibur documentation and they didn't reach out to me at all, by the way. So like I stumbled across this, and it's pretty slick, like pretty easy to do and pretty easy to interact with. So if you need to do something multiplayer, give these guys a look.
Yeah, I was telling you, it seems like a sort of like a backend as a service for multiplayer games.
Definitely. That's exactly what it seems like.
Very cool. Next up, I came across Flue. That's Flue, sort of like a chimney flue, which is a TypeScript agent harness. You can bring your own model and build your own agents. So add it on to the pile of agent frameworks that you could possibly use. This one looks pretty cool. Yeah, that's all I have to say about it. Should we move on to some community highlights?
We should. This one gave me some nostalgia from Blue Sky user chadloader.dev. They rebuilt Zork in TypeScript and React. Reminder, Zork released the original source code for Zork 1, 2, and 3 last November. So they went and just went ahead and did their own terminal UI for this, and I thought that was super cool.
Yeah, just reading from the Bleet, it looks like it actually downloads the original Z3 package and it runs it inside something called Z Machine, and then they're using a TUI library called Rezi, R-E-Z-I, which is a native library to do like the ANSI console rendering, and they said that it's super fast and seems like it's pretty easy to use. So TypeScript and React, but then they're using that library to do the rendering, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, you are likely to be eaten by a grue.
Classic.
Next on the list of community highlights, Ryan Carniato has one of his very long deep dive streams exploring TSRX, which is created by Dominic Ganaway, creator of Inferno.js, Ripple.ts, and former React and Svelte core team members, to talk about TSRX, which is a TypeScript language extension for building declarative UIs in an agentic era.
Oh.
So TSRX stands for TypeScript Render Extensions. So it's a way to write UI components that stays readable and co-located. So styling, structure, and control flow live together instead of separate files and stays fully compatible with TypeScript.
That's
so
interesting.
You can think of this as a spiritual successor to JSX. Same mental model, looks the same for the most part, but it's framework agnostic, interoperable, and it compiles to React, Preact, Solid, Ripple, Vue, yada, yada, yada. You pick your favorite flavor of front-end templating. It'll just work. This is pretty slick because it kind of gives web components. It's like functional web components. There's a new keyword here. So you do like export component, name of your component, and then open squirrely, and then you start writing HTML. So it's like you're writing a functional component in React, but you've got a new keyword and it looks like a class and there's no arrow. So it looks similar but different.
That's cool. It looks, I guess, more like a Vue component file then.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Do you know, or can you tell, is it like really actual natural HTML and not like the sort of Frankenstein HTML that is JSX? Because that gets translated to JavaScript behind the scenes, which is why it's weird.
Yeah.
Where you have to use class name instead of class.
Well, I have good news for you. They have an example that is just using the word class.
There you go. Well, maybe that answers it then.
Yeah, this looks nice because it looks just like plain old
All right,
HTML.
I'm sold.
Yeah, I might have to check this out. I'm really curious if this works with like lit. Because I wind up using lit a lot for my stuff now. And now I've got people at work using it. I managed to talk people in work in lit.
Cool. Yeah, so I'm just sort of joking. I don't know for sure, and I can't tell from the doc's homepage if it is actually just purely HTML, but it definitely looks like it. So that's cool. All right. Next up from Andre Klein, he had a fun little blog post that is, I went back to boring web dev and I'm not sorry. And I think this is really relatable. I feel like if you're listening to the show, like literally if you're listening like to this episode, like right now, you're probably like, oh my God, there's so much. And not only is that because we missed 2 weeks of news, we had to catch up, but also the front end landscape is exhausting. I mean, that's why we had to create a show, because otherwise there's like not really a good way for me and Eric to like keep up with what's going on in the world. And so we hope that we're doing everyone a service here, letting people stay informed about what's going on. But Andre's post is like, this is just exhausting. Like, what tools do I use? I have to like cobble together all these different tools together to try to just make a JavaScript app. I'm like sick and tired of this. Oh, and I have to like update my packages every day because there's a new supply chain attack. I'm just done with it. And so But what's funny is that he goes into how he's using HTMX now. And we've talked about HTMX. It is like still a modern way to do like server-side rendering and code, but it's a lot simpler. It uses a simpler syntax. It's a lot more approachable. Doesn't use JavaScript, I don't think, right?
Well, it does, but it hides it.
Hides it,
So it's the idea is that you can accomplish most things by things that look like hypermedia. So, that way you can like really get a lot done without writing any JavaScript. That there is some JavaScript to enable this, but you don't see it.
Yes, but if you do want to write some of the interactive parts with JavaScript, he's using Alpine.js. And so that's more of like a minimum viable like client-side rendering library. Like definitely not framework, more definitely a library. And Alpine looks more like Angular templating syntax where there's like attributes like @click, and then inside of the attribute you can say like open equals not open, right? And so you do a condition in there. So he's using Alpine and HTMX, and that suits him, which is nice. So it's always like you should use what makes you happy, and it seems like that makes Andre happy, which is awesome.
Excellent. And next up, Cinnamon on Blue Sky, user's name is Plushy Holdings, has a list of features that they would like in TypeScript. And I like these. Some notables are decorators can't alter function signatures. String literals and tag template literals aren't const known, but their values are. And there's no concept of like own properties versus like enumerable properties, which means like weird types can fall out of like, a spread operator, for example. And then there's some like less lower hanging fruit they bring up, which is more like around like, aesthetics and some weirdness with the type intersection operator. And then the last one, which I think is very interesting, would be to do like some compile time reflection, like a const type literal runtime value construct would be really cool.
Yeah.
But it makes like type checking mandatory for transpilation. So might not belong in TypeScript really. But it could be neat to do like some kind of compile time reflection in TypeScript, like comp time.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That would be really neat.
That is neat.
So there's a few other things I didn't mention in their post, but it's worth a read.
We have talked about a cool link before, comptime.ts. That's a Zig-style comp time equivalent for TypeScript projects that works in Vite and Bun. So Cinnamon could get a little bit of their comp time love if they're looking for that.
That's interesting. Yeah. I think that was, if I remember right, that was a compiler extension, a TypeScript extension.
Yeah. Yep.
That's cool.
So yeah, there could be some movement on that, which is neat.
Blue Sky user Jonathan Bones calls out that a JSON.stringify turns your date into an ISO string. Awesome. JSON.parse gives you back a string, not a date, and TypeScript won't warn you about it. And they wrote up an article about this in Zustand. And how you can fix this and how you can avoid this particular thorny problem. So definitely go give that a read.
Yeah, I feel like I've run into this myself before, for sure. It is one of those gotchas that's like, what? Did not expect that.
Yeah, dates don't round trip. Oops. All right. I have a Bleet of the Week from Ryan Kavanaugh, a member of the TypeScript team. They write, TypeScript programmers who've taken max sanity damage will sometimes attempt to use union to tuple, a cryptid helper type that tries to answer the question, what if MC Escher started drawing Venn diagrams?
Have you used that type? Have you used that utility?
Well, I think everyone's attempted to write one. And then I did one, and then I realized the folly of that move.
It's like one of those things where you're like, this can't be that hard. And then you get into it, and then you're just like vibrating.
Your computer cracks in half.
All right. You got some cool links for us?
Yeah. One of our contributors, Justin, has built like an Excalibur shader playground.
Yeah, I saw that.
It's super dope.
It's super cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's in their game development library. So we'll add a link to that. It's exshaderlab.vercel.app. But they have a couple like little fun ones that are in there by default. They have like a Voronoi, they have like a Ripple shader, and they have like a Plasma that's kind of fun to watch and kind of space out to.
I saw
it's super cool.
That Justin was trying to make some like Balatro style card effects using the shader editor. So it made it really easy. Or I think he used Claude or or API or an AI to like do the first shot at it to like, here, make a sparkle effect or whatever. But then you could plug it into the shader editor and then you could tweak it, which is really cool.
Yep. Definitely worth taking a look. The other cool link I have is this person recreated the PSP from cast acrylic and brass by machining them, and it's gorgeous.
That's cool.
So cool. This is Polymath on YouTube. If you haven't watched he's like the Bob Ross of fabrication. Like, so much fun to watch him build stuff.
That's neat.
And the last one I have is an oldie but a goodie, but Simon Dev does a lot of really good video game graphics videos that are very entertaining. He's got a really great dry sense of humor. I paid for his course, not sponsored, but it's a fantastic course if you want to like learn shader stuff. But in this video, he talks about how they use radiance cascades to do like realistic lighting in a way that's not going to break your game's render budget.
That's interesting.
So it's pretty neat.
I don't know what those two words mean together, but that sounds cool. And what I think about is like lights overlapping each other, but I don't know.
I used to know what radiance cascades were.
I don't know if that's what it is though. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's like a fancy pants way of doing like real-time shadows.
I grew up a gamer, and I remember one of those like milestone moments is like when we got normal mapping, and like that was cool. Now you can see like bumps, textures.
Normal mapping gives you like that brick that look real, or that lizard scale that look real.
Exactly. Yeah, things have come a long way. My cool link is a cool podcast. So you're listening to this show. It's maybe because you like the two of us yapping together because we're buddies. If you like that style of show, but you want it in personal finance form, the podcast you want to go listen to right now is called Inside Out Money, and it's hosted by Maggie. And she has like a rotating set of co-hosts. So she's even cooler than us. Whereas like if I rotated out Eric or Eric rotated out me every week for like someone new, and she has repeat people on all the time, but that's pretty fun. And so they do different topics, but I actually listened to like a grab bag episode, which was really fun. And then she also had an episode with her husband talking about their early retirement in their 30s because they've been 4 years early retired.
That's bonkers. I love
and
that.
They're, at least her husband is almost 40, not quite, but she's in her 40s. So about our age, which is pretty cool. But you can hear their experience of like, what's it been like? And they have kids and like they talk about how it's going with that. So yeah, and I like the way that she sort of approaches topics and things like that. So highly recommend if you're interested in personal finance and you want something that's like less sort of like hustly, I suppose, you might want to check out Inside Out Money.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think I'll check that out.
Yeah.
That seems like my alley, especially now that everything is so wicked expensive.
Yeah. Time for the Minnesota long goodbye, and it's like it's time for bed now. And there was just a lot of security news to get through.
Yeah. Well, it's only going to get worse, I think.
That's what you were going to talk about. Yeah.
Yeah, it's only going to get worse.
Yeah.
From like a couple of angles. One, I think LLMs are really good at writing security vulnerabilities, almost to a fault, because they're trained on the internet's code, and the internet is well known to be a great source of those. So I think it's just going to I think in the next 6 to 10 months, we're going to see like just a huge influx in like technical debt, security vulnerabilities. And I'm waiting for the next like write up, the postmortem to be like, this was LLM. Like we're going to point the blame at an LLM.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's changing software engineering culture too, at least in a small way. I'm like, I see it in my small little world, my context, which is my own app, right? Where now I'm like, each week I'm like spending time making sure that, hey, I've got Dependabot set up so that it's, suggesting the new packages to update to. And I'm trying to keep on top of that, right? Or I'm making sure that I'm paying attention to NuGet vulnerability alerts. And like I upgraded my auth package. I threw out the old one because it was unsafe, not secure. Now I have the brand new one. It's fully up to date. So like I'm spending time doing a lot of security infrastructure stuff or like working on security for my own app just to like maintain it, like to keep the lights on. And so I think that that's becoming like sort of a opportunity, I think. And I was talking to you about this, that I wish there was a way to make that experience better, like that developer experience. Cause like I don't have a security team. And like if you want to be a soloist and you want to have your own app, like you don't have the budget to like go get a security team, right? Like especially I don't.
Yeah.
And so like there might be an opportunity then for services to pop up to be like, hey, we run agentic security harnesses against your project and we'll help you set it up. And I would love that actually, because then I don't have to like be dealing with this like day to day, because I mean, security is so important, right? And I know it's important, so I have to spend the time to do it. But like, it would be great if something like Dependabot ran in the background, but also did security vulnerability testing for me and like opened a PR with a test case and the deployment environment set up and a link I can click to like see the exploit in action or like a recording of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like it writes an end-to-end test and then attaches the recording. Like, whew, perfect. And I just make sure that it commits the right code to fix it, and boom, we're off to the races.
How much you want to bet Socket is working on something like that?
I mean, I'm not, my credit card is not out for Socket quite yet, but I'm so close. Okay.
Yeah.
Pharos, if you're listening to this, I'm so close to whipping out my credit card and paying you money. And the only reason I haven't is because I haven't been able to like really test the value fully, because there's a limit to how many dependencies it'll scan for you. And so I'll like hit the limit like pretty easily. And so
and you've got a pretty good sized app for the free tier.
Yeah.
And I haven't run into that same problem.
I have more than 6,000 dependencies.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Node modules.
So yeah, I'm rocking the Socket CLI free tier on all of my machines, and
I will say
it's been good.
I recommend the Socket firewall. That's SFW. That will work on any number of dependencies I found. So you just prefix that SFW npm install, and it will tell you, hey, it scanned for this many packages, and then it also protects you from like post install stuff. And if you need to use it npm, otherwise, switch over to pnpm if you can. But yeah, and then I do have it running on pull requests also. But because my app is so big, sometimes it doesn't post the dependency reports on it. So I think that if they did add that feature of like, we will be able to do automated security tests and coverage for you, I'd be like, yeah, shut up, take my money, because I want to be protected from that. And that's why I think that security is like going to be a major driver of adoption for like model agent stuff, because like it doesn't really matter. Well, it does matter at the model level right now. Frontier models are going to be better at this, but let's fast forward 10 years, models are going to be a commodity. You'll be able to run a model on your local machine. At that point, the harness is what matters, right? So if I was making an AI company, like I would be focused on doing some sort of security harness company that can plug into any of these projects. Because one of the takeaways from the Firefox blog post was that the security harness is specific to the project and the product and the pipelines that you have set up, right? Like I can't get anything off the shelf right now, I don't think, that would do that for my app, because my app has weird requirements of like, well, it uses, so-and-so database, which is running in a Docker container here, and it's, plugged into this API layer, which is hosted here, et cetera, uses, this different technology, blah, blah, blah. And so I would have to set it up myself if I want to do that type of thing.
Yeah, I think this kind of like falls into that conversation we had around like dev tools, needing to be free and open and sticky. Like I feel like this whole like pay for play is gonna bubble over here soon, and it's gonna be local only. And then the only play is tooling.
Yep.
And harnesses.
I think, and I was thinking about this too, of like, when might I pay for like a frontier AI model? And it would be like, if it can find vulnerabilities and fix them to prevent a breach, and then the question is, how much is a breach worth to you, right? And I think we're going to get closer and closer to more like value-based like decisions and pricing based on that. So if we say, as a business, would say like, well, a breach, we know previous breaches have cost us X millions of dollars. Okay, you willing to spend 10% of that on a model like model costs for an agentic harness? Yeah, we will. We'll spend 10% of our budget on that because businesses again are all about risk reduction, right? And security, compliance, governance, like those are all things that companies care about and they want to reduce risks on. So that's why I think that security will be one of those drivers, because that's what will drive a budget. Like, we don't want to get a breach. And that's something that executives can understand.
I think it's an especially good area for LLMs is that introspection.
Yeah.
And classification of security vulnerabilities. Like even like with today's models, very doable. Like I think I was reading somewhere that it's not just Mythos that can find stuff. Like
I used Copilot I just had to do a really small test of like, look at my login controller, my account controller, and tell me, do you spot anything? And sure enough, it was like, hey, you got this issue right here. And I was like, I'm pretty sure I mitigated that, and I did, right? So I thought about that attack vector, but it did find it, and it was not quite a positive, but it also was not like a false slop, recommendation. It was actually correct, and it did have a good point, and it was saying, well, you did mitigate it over here. After I told it, I was like, hey, I mitigated it over here. Like, yes, you did, but it's also not obvious that you mitigated it there. So maybe you want to do some mitigation here inside the code. I'm like, okay, fine. You have a point there, Mr. Bot. So I did actually mitigate it right there in the code too. But that only took like 5 seconds for it to like scan my file, and I had it give me a report for like the OWASP vulnerability that it relates to and the severity. And sure enough, It found like 5 things. And luckily, I mitigated all of it, but still it was like, well, there you go. There's a like little report. And that was just from one file. I did not ask it to like scan the entire flow end to end, which is probably more of the next type of step.
Yeah, I'm super curious how well like Quen or some of these other like local models would do.
True. Yeah. I didn't test that, but I do have that set up now, so possibly I could test that.
Yeah, that'd be. I'm probably going to try out like Quen with open code just to see what it does.
Yeah, just to play with it. Well, and that's sort of like this discussion is sort of an example of why LLMs can be helpful, right? Because like as a human, I can't think of an obvious attack vector, but an LLM will doop scan the code base or found an issue here where you might be able to put an absolute URL into this parameter, and it is read by this piece of code that looks at the cache busting. And if you change the cache busting to a actual URL, it gets loaded by fetch, and then that fetch, you can fetch a blob file, and that blob will be decoded into blah blah.
It'll execute it
exactly.
It'll steal your NFTs
exactly. Yeah,
it'll drain your bank account.
So it's like they can pattern match much faster than we can, but. Yeah. All right. Now we're starting to get goofy. That means it's time to go to bed.
Yeah, it's definitely bedtime.
Cool. All right. Nighty-night.
Night.
Hi, everyone. This is Kamran. I just wanted to thank you for listening to the show, and we hope you enjoyed the episode. If you want to see the show notes, you can check your podcast player or go to TypeScript.fm, where you'll see a list of all the episodes. If you enjoyed the show, tell your friends, and please rate it on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, because that's how the show grows and gets discovered by more people. If you want to suggest news or a project that should be covered, or just want to say hi, email us at feedback@typescript.fm. If you want to follow us on social, we're both active on Blue Sky. I'm at Kamranigas.com, and Eric is at ericonerheim.com. You can also follow the show directly at typescript.fm.